Before I begin this video, is it just me or does Christine Blasey Ford bear a strong resemblance to Garth from Wayne's World?
I'm coming to get you.
Anyway, somebody recently sent me a link to this video. When I watched it, I thought it was an Onion News Network spoof commercial mocking law enforcement. And then I realized it comes from the Florida Sheriff's YouTube channel. It was launched on October 16, 2015, has over 300,000 views, and of course, the comments are disabled. This is one of the most blatant propaganda pieces for upside down world I've seen in a while. Let's go through this.
This very important law enforcement officer training video is being brought to you by Star and Shield Group, dedicated to the public safety community and their families. What you need to know about the sovereign citizen movement.
I'm Sadie Darnell, Sheriff of Alachua County. This video is being produced by the Florida Sheriff's Association and the U.S. Attorney's Office to raise awareness for law enforcement regarding the sovereign citizen movement and how they may impact us. Sovereign citizen is a catch-all phrase used to describe a variety of anti-government groups and individuals.
Okay, that was a mouthful, so let's take this one step at a time. First, wearing a costume and appearing on camera does not equal credibility. Logic and reason is the credible foundation we'll rely on as we go through this video. Next, I wouldn't personally use the term sovereign citizen because it lends itself to the idea of a legally recognized subject or national of a state or commonwealth. If you truly believe you are not subject to the imagined state powers, then I think you would only want to refer to yourself as an individual. And all individuals are indeed sovereign. You own you, I own me. I have no right to harm you if you haven't violated my sovereignty, and you have no right to harm me if I haven't violated your sovereignty. It's pretty simple. No one on this earth has a higher legitimate claim over your life or property than you. And you don't have a higher legitimate claim over the lives and properties of others. I think even a 5-year-old can understand this. She says that these people
share a common belief that our United States government, including our court system and law enforcement, is a fraud and they are exempt from our authority.
This is not a common belief. It's an observable fact. The U.S. government, the court system, and law enforcement are indeed frauds. The power of the state is a fiction that rests in the minds of those who believe that certain human beings possess rights the rest of us don't have. If no one has a higher legitimate claim over your life and property than you, then that includes individuals who call themselves government. Unless, of course, there is some magic that exists which transforms regular human beings into superhumans with godlike authoritative powers. And since that's not true, we need to go with reality. If they do have such a power over others, where did they get it? And why doesn't everybody have that kind of authority? Are they saying that uniforms, badges, and titles grant special rights? If they can't prove this, then they are the ones who are acting outside the bounds of legitimacy, logic, reason, and truth. And they actually dwell in the world of immorality. She says that such people claim to be exempt from our authority. What's her implication here? Wait a minute, buddy. You are subject to my authority. How utterly pompous. Now get ready for some heavy-duty propaganda.
Now to Georgia, where the streets outside a county courthouse were quiet again after a bloody shootout on its steps.
Just before lunch, this was the sound of the gunfight outside the Forsyth County Courthouse north of Atlanta, recorded on a cell phone by an eyewitness. Police say that Dennis Marks, a self-described anti-government sovereign citizen.
So the seed that's planted in the minds of viewers of this propaganda piece is, if you're anti-government, which is not much different than saying anti-mafia, except that the government is worse, then you are a bad person.
Was behind the wheel of this silver SUV, carrying an assault rifle, tear gas, pepper spray, 2 handguns, a bomb, and flex ties that he planned to use to restrain people. Marks was part of an underground movement that believes its members don't have to follow the law. The government calls them domestic terrorists. They publicly reject violence, but members have had shootouts with police before.
So what they're trying to convey to listeners is that while they publicly reject violence, their actions tell a different story. If this guy truly had an anarchist mindset, he would not be seeking to harm people. It'd be like saying you're an animal lover and yet you kick your dog and you torment kittens. Then the news gets up there and says that people who call themselves animal lovers are really domestic animal abusers. They're grouping anti-government individuals, which we all should be because those involved in government are part of the world's largest crime syndicate. They're saying that anti-government people are domestic terrorists. Just take my word for it. I'm government and I'm always right.
I'm Pamela Marsh, and I'm the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Florida. There have been numerous encounters by law enforcement with sovereign citizens across the nation and right here in the state of Florida. We've seen sovereign citizens who've created their own driver's license and vehicle tags. They've filed million-dollar false liens against government officials and law enforcement officials. They may challenge the validity of our state and national laws.
Oh my gosh, they challenge the validity of state and national laws? You know, laws that threaten innocent people, harm them, take their stuff, and lead them off to war? They challenge the validity of those laws? How criminal of them.
Sovereign citizens may tell you that you have no authority over them and that they are not within your jurisdiction, but that is simply not true.
Did you get what she's saying? They say you don't have authority over them, but that's not true. You do have authority over them. You are their rightful rulers. There is a ruling class and there is a slave class. You law enforcers are the ruling class and you have every right to rule over your slaves. They are under your jurisdiction and under your authority. Look at this woman. She's one of the many glazed over zombie cult leaders in the largest authoritarian cult on the planet called government. And we're just warming up, guys.
It's our hope that through this training video, you will learn more about what sovereign citizens believe and that most of all, it will help keep you safe.
Translation? It's our hope that through this cult indoctrination brainwashing video that you will come to understand that you don't own yourself. We do. If we give a command, you must comply. If we craft a law, you must obey. You are not to question our authority or jurisdiction over you. You are the slave, we are the masters. Do I make myself clear?
Known as sovereign citizens. People who do not believe that many of the basic laws of this country apply to them.
I'm not an American citizen. I do not recognize these. I am my counsel.
They have disrupted courtrooms, led police on high-speed chases, and even engaged in murderous shootouts with authorities.
Remember, anytime you watch the news, they always call individuals with badges and uniforms and guns officials or authorities. These people actually believe that they have the moral right to rule you, and you have the moral obligation to obey those rulers or you will be punished.
Oh my God!
There are an estimated 300,000 sovereign citizens in America. The FBI classifies them as a domestic terrorist movement.
Isn't that ironic? The FBI, the nation's own domestic terrorist movement, calls sovereign individuals a domestic terrorist movement. What about the IRS, or the CIA, or the DEA? What about the Department of Injustice? These state-funded agencies are demonstrably domestic terrorist groups. This is unbelievably hypocritical.
Many of these people followed a scary progression from passionate but peaceful to ultra-violent.
A sovereign is an individual that interprets the Constitution of the United States differently.
Actually, no. A sovereign person is one who doesn't want to be unjustly threatened, harmed, or stolen from. You guys, on the other hand, claim to have more rights, more authority, more legitimacy than other people. Period. So who are the crazy ones? The ones who want peace or the ones who want to boss everybody else around?
Sovereigns believe essentially that the United States government is not a legitimate government, but is a corporation.
Sovereigns believe this? This is what the government says about itself. Here it is right here. Title 28, U.S. Code 3002-15A. United States means a federal corporation. But they don't think twice about villainizing you for proclaiming the simple, observable truth. Look, guys, when you stand up for your individual rights, you're actually standing up for the rights of every human being everywhere. It's not okay for other people to think it's okay for them to initiate violence, issue threats, and steal the belongings of others. An injustice committed by one man anywhere is an injustice committed against all men everywhere. If water is indeed wet, and it is, there is no man-made law that can make it anything other than it is. If stealing and the initiation of force against innocent people is wrong for you and me, then it's wrong for everyone. I don't care if they call themselves government or law enforcer or whatever. The sad thing is, it's dangerous to be right when the government is so wrong.
So they will not have a driver's license, a vehicle registration, an insurance card, or anything in which there is some type of implicit contract, verbal or nonverbal contract, in which the United States government can hold sway over them as a slave.
I can't believe you just said that. Because that's exactly what government does through all these things. Licensing, registration, regulations, and laws. These all hold sway over the people and make them slaves of the state.
Sovereigns believe in two different things, that each of us are two distinct individuals. We are our free man, which is our flesh and blood, our human aspect, and we're our straw man. And that straw man is that corporate slave, if you will, to the United States corporate government.
The second thing to me is actually irrelevant. We are individuals, period. That's all that matters. I'm a person and you are a person. You don't have more rights than me, and I don't have more rights than you. If there's some means of legislative hocus pocus, they've deceived us or coerced us into signing onto some tax form or liability waiver or so-called social contract, that's a different thing altogether. The real world dilemma is that there are certain people who think they have a legitimate authority over others. Now, I understand about the corporate fiction and the straw man argument, but I'm not totally on board with it. The bottom line for me is that I'm a human and you're a human. You don't hurt me and take my stuff, and I don't hurt you and take your stuff. If at any point we transgress that, then we've committed a very real crime because we've left a very real victim.
The rhetoric of a sovereign is very important from an officer safety standpoint. You'll hear a lot that I'm a free man of the land.
I am protected by the land. Do not tell me to shut up! I am the living natural man, and my voice will be heard.
This is Ernie Wayne Tahlequah, the Montana mountain man who was arrested and fined and caged for fishing without a government-issued license. Remember, a license is nothing more than the government taking your natural right away from you and selling it back to you as a permission slip to do whatever you had the right to do in the first place.
They will ask you, what is the reason for stopping me?
This guy acts like asking what you're being stopped for is the action of a domestic terrorist.
I'm gonna ask you again, what am I being pulled over for? What am I being stopped for? Am I being detained?
I am traveling, I am not driving, I do not have to provide a driver's license because I am a sovereign.
Guys, think about this for a second. Even driver's licenses are truly illegitimate and don't even have any ground in their so-called supreme law of the land, the Constitution. You have a right to travel, therefore you have the right to drive. And nobody has any legitimate authority to take that right away from you.
All right, stay seated and Scott, you have a license on you?
I do not submit to unlawful inquiry, sir.
Okay, so you don't have a driver's license?
I have a right to travel unencumbered freely.
You do not have jurisdiction over me.
So what's he implying here? We do have jurisdiction over you. And if you think we don't, you are the crazy one.
Are you a peace officer or a police officer? There's a difference in the sovereign rhetoric.
I also need to know if you're a constitutional common law peace officer, or are you a police officer, because there is a difference.
Some sovereigns will ask you to fill out paperwork explaining your jurisdiction over them. Some will be argumentative, but the argument that you will get most is that you have, as a law enforcement officer, you have no jurisdiction over them. And they will constantly repeat that.
Proving that no human being has the legitimate authority or jurisdiction over another human being is very simple. If you do believe you have jurisdiction or authority over me, then you believe I am a slave and that I must submit to your wishes as a master. Since slavery is an illegitimate and immoral proposition that hinges on the very real concept of evil, what these people are admitting, both overtly and covertly, is that you are their slaves and they are your masters.
Their objective is to confuse you.
That may be true for some, I don't know. But I would say the true objective is to be left alone and in peace, period. I'm not going to mess with you. Please, don't mess with me.
You don't know their level of commitment. If they are providing this information in order to confuse you or in order to distract you to the point where they can take advantage of you and assault you or kill you.
Another lie that attempts through propaganda to villainize peaceful people. Then they give this story.
May the 20th, 2010 started out like any other day. Two veterans of our West Memphis, Arkansas Police Department, Bill Evans and Brandon Powdert, were patrolling the interstate as part of the department's drug interdiction team, something they love to do.
Drug interdiction or prohibition team. This is a part of the so-called war on drugs, which is really a war on people. And this is something that these officers loved to do. In other words, they loved harassing harmless, innocent people because politicians made a law which made it illegal to possess certain compounds or plants. Hey, we're just following orders.
They became involved in what seemed to be a routine traffic stop, though I've always warned my officers there is no such thing. But really, how much more routine can you get than pulling over a father and son in what looked like a church bus? My men didn't realize who or what they were dealing with. Neither officer made it home. And one of them was my son.
Now, these officers were involved in committing a crime by stopping these people and harassing them. And they were killed in the act of committing a crime. When a street thug without a uniform commits a crime, do people generally feel sorry for the violent offenders? No.
I'm Bob Powdert, Chief of the West Memphis Police Department. My officers, Bill and my son Brandon, didn't realize that there are people at war with this country that are not international terrorists.
Exactly, Bob. And those people that are at war with America are the international bankers, their puppet politicians, and the enforcers, like your son, who chose to suppress truth and trample freedoms as they just followed their orders. These are the true terrorists.
They are seemingly ordinary people, just like you and me, but they don't recognize the federal government's authority to impose laws or taxes on them.
That's because outside of psychotic fantasy land, humans don't have the legitimate right to impose laws which are the commands of politicians or theft on other humans. Ever. And it's utter insanity to try to convince people otherwise.
They're known as sovereign citizens. Their beliefs may sound so out there that they appear comical or crazy.
No, Bob, what you're saying is comical and crazy. What you're saying is that you have the moral right to tell other grown adults what they should and shouldn't do because you say it. If people don't comply, you believe you have the moral right to punish the disobedient. You reserve for yourself, without any just cause, the right to harm others and steal their stuff.
But don't discount or ignore these people, because they're willing to kill and be killed for these beliefs.
If that is not a broad brush, I don't know what is. I bet there aren't a fraction of so-called sovereign citizens who would harm anybody. And even if they were all crazy, That doesn't mean the principles of self-ownership and determination or the principle of do to others what you would want others to do to you don't apply.
We as law enforcement officers need to recognize this very real threat so we can protect ourselves.
The very real threat comes from a gang of badged and uniformed thugs who believe they can boss people around, exact fines, arrest, and cage people.
And maybe if Brandon and Bill had been able to recognize the warning signs of sovereign beliefs, they'd be alive today.
Maybe if Brandon and Bill had minded their own business and not unjustly provoked someone to wrath, they'd still be alive today.
Indicators from an officer safety standpoint is,
oh my God, look at this horrible indicator that you're dealing with a domestic terrorist. I don't want to be safe. I just want to be free. We dare defend our rights. Feds out of Dixie. What criminals for wanting to defend their rights? What criminals for wanting to be free?
There are indicators on the vehicle itself. It could be bumper stickers.
They're even condemning a clip from one of our founding fathers, James Adams.
It could be a specific type of homemade license plate. They will not have legitimate driver's licenses or vehicle registrations.
Legitimate driver's licenses or registrations. The implication here is that government-issued permission slips or licenses, those are the ones that are legitimate. As if it's legitimate to take a man's natural right away and sell it back to him with limitations.
However, they will have homemade licenses or registration which furthers their cause. There's three types of sovereign categories in which we see regularly. Constitutional sovereigns, religious sovereigns, which believe the only law they have to follow is God's law, and diplomatic sovereigns, which believe that they are diplomats or citizens of another country or Native American or Aboriginal to the United States, therefore not subject to United States law. From a law enforcement standpoint, if a law enforcement officer has an encounter that someone is claiming to be a sovereign citizen, it is very important to have a plan. And what we suggest is when you identify someone as a sovereign, either through their rhetoric, through their paperwork, or through some other type of means, is you automatically disconnect and call for a backup officer and for a supervisor.
Yeah, Sarge, we need some backup here. This guy just asked me where I got the right to be a road pirate and asked me if I would personally like someone to extort me like I'm doing to him. It sounds like a domestic terrorist to me, Sarge. He's impeding my ability to steal his money. Please send backup. Over.
Have a plan when it comes to dealing with a sovereign. Document the incident through a report, through a field contact. Document the incident and then share that information with your agency, with other surrounding agencies.
In other words, make a record of that person so we can have him on file and make his life difficult.
And if you engage in a verbal confrontation with them, rest assured they're most likely videotaping it. And then they will use that as propaganda to discredit you as an officer, to discredit your agency, and to further their sovereign beliefs and cause.
Yeah, if we record cops being criminals and put that out on the internet for all to see, that's propaganda that furthers the cause of what again? How about it furthers the cause of justice and brings your criminal actions to light? These law enforcers do not like being filmed.
I just asked you for your license, your registration, and your proof of insurance.
Okay, I'm going to tell you you're being video recorded and audio recorded.
So are you.
Oh, well, good.
Do not get distracted by their verbiage, by their rhetoric, by their onslaught of paperwork or language that they're giving you.
In other words, don't get distracted by the facts. Don't get confused by logic. Don't come to the realization that you, Mr. Cop, are violating your own laws. And for God's sake, don't wake up to the fact that if you were to take a shuttle back to the days of the Founding Fathers and you look down, you'd find that you're wearing a red coat. And if you looked up, you'd discover that you're looking down the barrel of a musket owned by a Sam Adams or a Patrick Henry. Because none of those guys would tolerate the tyrannical crap you're trying to shovel out in this propaganda video for 1 second. Hey, law enforcers, I'm really glad you put a video like this out there for everybody to see just how insane you truly are.
When they come into the courts, usually they have lots of paperwork that's hard to decipher. It takes a lot of time with our staff to try to decipher what it is they're trying to file. And then in their case files, they're usually very voluminous. They take a lot of time.
Oh, look, the state's playing the victim. This is hilarious. Like the state doesn't know anything about storing voluminous records on us.
And in the courts, they can be belligerent. Sometimes they don't want to stand up when the judge comes into the courtroom.
Did you hear that? These people expect for you to stand up and honor them when they come into the courtroom. They expect you to obey their commands. They expect you not to question their authority. They expect you to treat it as a foregone conclusion that you are their subject and they are your masters.
And they're always representing themselves in the court. So you can see it does have a huge impact on the courts, on a statewide basis.
In one county in the Northern District of Florida, an individual turned violent when law enforcement went to execute a warrant at his home.
Imagine that. Somebody wanting to protect themselves against the thuggery of armed enforcers.
Sheriff's offices are often targeted by sovereign citizen groups because we're in charge of the courts and we run both the civil and criminal process serving. When a sovereign citizen presents you either false identification or invalid documents, you need to advise them that it's not recognized by the sheriff or the court and then take no action on it. But be very cautious of how you approach them and what you say to them because you can leave your agency open for liability.
Did you hear that? Be real careful what you say around these people because you can leave yourself open to liability. What kind of liability would that be? Oh, I don't know. How about harassing people? People who haven't committed a crime? Just take a look at this frame for a second. Sovereign citizen extremist violence. There's no more extremist or violent entity than those who are part of government. So violent, in fact, that the government is responsible for slaughtering over 250 million of its own people in the last century alone. And they call these homegrown terrorists? Who doesn't rightly hate the government?
It's not gone away. It increases in membership and beliefs.
Let's end this propaganda piece with this. Check out what this chick says.
There are groups of individuals who believe that the United States government is something that they do not have to abide by and something that they will actively resist.
Golly, ma'am, I'm not real good at history, but that sure sounds like another group of people a couple 100 years ago who thought exactly that. Let's see now. Who was that? Oh yeah, them there guys who wrote that their Declaration of Independence. Independence means they were declaring their sovereignty. In other words, they believed they owned themselves and they didn't need rulers or masters telling them what to do. The fundamental basis upon which this country was built has been condemned and labeled as domestic terrorism by this state-funded propaganda video. Leave your thoughts about this for the world, the Google Thought Police, and of course the federal government in the comments section below. Also, take a second to check out the hundreds of freedom-loving, tyranny-hating designs in the shirt store. I'll see you guys in the next video. Guys, I don't know how much longer my channel will be around here on YouTube. Please take a minute and sign up to my email list. It's free, painless, and you'll get some cool stuff. Also, take another minute to subscribe to my decentralized, censorship-free BitChute and Steemit channels. All these links are in the description. I want you to know this. If my channel goes down, I'll still produce content for you guys through my website and through BitChute and Steemit. So make sure you stay connected through the email subscription link in the description below. Just watch the 45-second video on my website and you'll be all set. If you want to support my work on this channel, grab a shirt, snag a flashlight, or hit me up on Patreon and PayPal. I'll see you guys in the next video. Before you go, check out one of the most in-your-face, hard-hitting, conversation-starting shirt stores on the planet. Just by wearing one of these t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, or cutoffs, and without saying a word, You can let people know that black rifles matter. You can inform the sleeping masses that fluoride is dumbing them down, that Google is a gulag-style censorship machine, that the Department of Homeland Security is merely security theater, that the NSA makes your private life their business, that the Grim Reaper supports everyone's troops, that we need to legalize freedom, that in life there are no excuses, that CNN is a communist news network, voting is the suggestion box of slaves, that 9/11 was a lie, and that all official stories should be questioned. Also, let people know we're in the middle of a full-blown sheepvolution, taxation is theft, the IRS is an immoral robbery service, cops enjoy protecting and serving the crap out of you, that the space you occupy is not a gun-free zone, and that gun-free zones are the most dangerous places on earth. Your purchase helps support more hard-hitting content on my censored channel. As of the recording of this video, I have over 90 designs. I take your requests for new designs, and I'm adding new ones every week, so check back often. The link to the store is in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.